All right. Montana Wild, we're down here at the Western Hunt Expo. We got the guys from Leica with us. We got Ryan Holm, you're the marketing director.
Yeah, man.
Of Leica North America.
Yep.
Then when Hamilton Boykin, you're the education director. Is that your
manager? I'm a level below Ryan.
God, nice. Yeah. So,
but you keep him in check.
Is that possible?
yeah. So, fortunately, got everybody to come in early with us, and going to get a podcast and got a long list of questions to chat about Leica. Get a little understanding, and I think what, at least from my perspective, you guys are pretty well known for your binos, especially your range finding binos. And I think that'd be a fun place to start, just with the new AB pluses. I think would be a cool one. And just right off the bat, I'm curious about the range finding ability. How you guys rate your distances, your max distances, and it'd be interesting to know a little bit, like if you could dive into kind of the laser that's in them and like what the beam divergence is and all that. If you can kind of give us an overview.
Before we go there, I want to hear a little bit about Hamilton's background as far as like.
Awesome.
Let's ask him. How long have you been here for?
This is my 17th year with Leica.
Wow.
So,
that's awesome, man.
Just kind of grinding along. Just,
you got a long
the same questions over and over again.
You got a long history with the product line, then, so it's like you're the perfect guy to answer this type of stuff.
It's been a fun ride.
Yeah, it's everybody in the booth, or at trade or events. It's like if there's a technical question, it's Hamilton.
Nice.
So I feel like he's one of the more knowledgeable people about optics. That's been in the industry for this amount of time. So
I don't know about that, but I've sure learned to repeat the sheet music, I think.
Yeah, and Hamilton gives and some background. Hamilton's worked with the product team over in Germany for quite some years too, and is always challenging the status quo. And
Nice.
Yeah, man.
I'm known for pushing, and sometimes I can see him like, okay, we've heard you.
But it's helped push the product line to be as good as it can, I'm assuming.
Try.
Yeah,
definitely try.
That's awesome, man.
Context for why we're even here too would be good.
Yeah,
because this will probably be a little out of left field for like the podcast that we'll have when this one comes out.
For sure.
But I've used Leica for a long time before we had any new Ryan or someone at the brand. Like my dad had a pair of. Have the Geovid R's been around for a long time? Like what's the kind of that old school style range finding Leica?
That body we call the Geovid 2, and it came out in 2004, I believe.
Okay.
That basic, the foundational design of that binocular. So we're at like 21 years with that one. Our first range finding binocular, the Geovid 1 body that looked like a Luke, Skywalker Star Wars binocular, came out in late 91, early 92. So
because my dad had one of those pairs of the Leica Geovids, the range finding, kind of the old school looking ones. And I just remember looking through those and be like, dang, Dad, can we have these? And he was like, no. And then we had like bad Bushnells, and then got into hunting more, and then actually just spending some time around Mark Seacat. He was doing some work for Leica back when the HDBs came out, and then was able to find a way to get myself a pair of Geovids and then the Leica spotter, and I've just like kind of ran those ever since. I've dabbled elsewhere a little bit, but the Leica stuff is awesome. And so I think that's kind of what's brought us back here, especially knowing Ryan over the years, and then him being the marketing director. It was a pretty natural fit to be like, hey, let's keep doing more. And then, I don't know, Jared maybe doesn't quite have as much of a track record with the Leica product, but I know that he likes some of it. He was looking through my spotter on a hunt.
Up here, I had to switch from my Swaro ATC to the 82 Televid to be able to see that dang deer. But, I actually had a pair of Noctivids. It must have been 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. And I ran those for a whole hunting season. But I'm just a tinkerer, and I roll through stuff. It's like I kind of get a new batch of optics every other season or so. So but I have not had the Geovids yet on through a hunting season.
Gotcha.
So I'm excited to try them.
Nice.
But so I think this will be cool because there are a lot of like feature sets in some of the Leica products that are going to be marketed more, but probably haven't been really spoken to super well quite yet. Like especially like SPA, which we made a video on, but like some things kind of behind the curtain in the product. So hopefully.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
we'll dive into that. So
wherever the conversation goes, feel free to jump in, because it is like it's a vast product line, and it'll be good to give a little better explanation on some of those exact features. But let's jump back into the the AB pluses or just the GeoVid line in general. Like the question on the beam divergence and how you guys rate your maximum range.
So rating, first off, we definitely don't do a reflective, like rating of what's best case scenario. We try to be more along the lines of if it's big enough and it's solid enough to reasonably get a range off of it, then you're going to be able to range it at that distance.
Awesome.
It's not, we're ranging the side of a building at miles and miles.
Or a mirror out there set at 10,000
exactly.
yards, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give an example because we honestly, I try not to be too pinned down about it, except to say that we try to conservatively rate our rangefinders. They'll most of the time in really good conditions, our rangefinders will range further than they're rated to range.
Awesome.
But that's in really good conditions. But to give an example, we had a third-party guy out west who tested the previous generation of our CRF, and it was rated to range to 2,800 yards. Of course, you got to do your own. It's kind of like shooting. You can shoot a 1,000-yard target and hit it every time, but you're not going to do it leaning out the window of the pickup truck going down a washboard road 100%. At 35 miles an hour.
Yeah.
So you got to get a good base. You got to get a good, steady rest. Make sure you're on the target to range it, just like you do to hit it with a rifle. So with the tripod mount, he's ranging individual elk with our 2,800-yard compact rangefinder at 2,500 yards.
Nice.
So
that's awesome, man. That's impressive. Yeah, 'cause a lot of the things if you hit a big rock out there or something, maybe a snow-covered hillside, it'll do it. But not if you're trying to actually hit an animal. Then it's pretty has a tough time doing it.
And I'll dive right into the weeds with that because a lot of people don't realize, but you have an invisible beam, and that beam, you asked about beam divergence. It is, on the current products, it's 1.8 mils wide by 8.8 mils tall. So 1.8 meters wide at 1,000 meters or 1.8 yards wide at 1,000 yards. So it's wider than it is tall, and it's a rectangle to represent basically that most of the time when you're trying to range an animal, the animal's not going to be facing dead on or facing dead away. It's going to be some form of quartering to quartering away to full broadside. So your target's going to be wider than it is tall. So you, by having the beam shapes be about the same shape, you have less chance of ranging something accidentally in the foreground or in the background and either shooting short or shooting long. So that's item one. Item two is that since you have an invisible beam, where is that beam landing in relation to the reticle? We always expect that it would be, kind of dead center in the reticle. But something that I always want to do when I get a new rangefinder is I take it out and test it and use our scan mode where you hold down the ranging button the second time and it will continuously range. Start out in clear blue sky and pan into a water tower and find out, like moving right to left, find out where the left edge of the beam is, and then go left to right and find out where the right edge of the beam is, top to bottom, bottom to top, and then you've basically bracketed your invisible beam within your rangefinder.
Awesome.
So some people they freak out if it's not dead center. I'm like, well, actually, I kind of like it when it's, lined up either with the bottom or the top of the reticle. I'd rather it be a little off center so that I can lay the edge of the reticle right on the target and know that the beam's on.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
So just a little.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Sorry,
so
in the weeds.
Is it? No, I love it. Is that beam divergence across the line? Is it the same?
On all the pro products right now.
All the pros.
So the R's, I believe the R's are 1.5 by 0.5.
Oh, cool.
And
even tighter then?
Yeah, so it's tighter because it's a matter of the pros have more energy per square meter basically, or per mil. So in order to range further, they're putting out more energy, and that energy has to be spread out over a wider area so that you don't have too much laser, too many milliwatts of laser energy going into too small of an area where you can start doing damage to an eye.
Gotcha. So it's a more, and I've heard like the term class 3 laser, that stuff. Is it a more powerful laser?
These are all class 1 lasers.
Okay.
The only class 3 laser we've ever done was the CRF3500.com.
Okay, gotcha.
That was the only class 3. And I don't think we'll end up doing another class 3 laser.
Really?
Yeah.
Because it's obviously performing great with the rest of the line. So I've got a question just as far as like you're talking about with the water tower. That's a really good tip to figure out where your laser is. But if you're like in a field and you got grass and there's like an antelope buck, that's where like guys really I struggle trying to get a good range. As far as I'm assuming it's software related that deals with all the reflections coming back. How does it process that, and what are the options within the Leica rangefinders to deal with first, last, best, or that type of stuff?
So it's all automatic on our system right now. We don't have a first, best, last, or ELR target programming setting. We've kicked it around, but that's not ever been something we've done so far. But what ours do, and we kind of started, I think a lot of people are probably doing it now, But say you're ranging a mule deer and it's snowing, and you could, if you hit that, what do you know what your beam hit? If it bounced off a snowflake and it came back as 54 yards, when you know that mule deer is 200 yards away, obviously you know you have a problem. But the laser is actually taking several hundred measurements for each time it gives you a value.
Wow.
So it's called a multi-gated return, is what they tell me. I didn't come up with that term, but what they're doing is it's shooting out, say it's 200 shots of a laser, because light travels so fast, you can do that and still get an answer back in the 0.3 seconds or so that our rangefinder, gives you a value after you've hit the range button. But you get a random 54, 75, 123, 157, but then 50 or 75 or 100 of the measurements all come back at 200 yards. And so it's throwing out all the flyers, and it's going with the one that it got the most responses for. So that's how it doesn't get spoofed by, individual snowflakes or leaves falling and that kind of stuff in between it and the target. Wow,
that's awesome. So, and then on the 42 millimeter objectives, and it's the 32s or the smaller ones. Is it a similar laser in both of those, and is it just it has a slightly less ranging distance on it? What's the difference there on those two?
So the engineers and the product managers tell me that it's because of the smaller objective lens itself is a smaller aperture, letting less light in, and that reduces the effective range of the laser. It's the same laser going out, but how much light is getting back into what's essentially, it's the same sensor behind a 32 millimeter hole or behind a 42 millimeter hole, which both of those holes have lenses in them that are focusing all the light down onto one certain area. So basically you're getting fewer milliwatts back into the binocular with the 32 than you do with the 42, and so you have less ranging capability.
Wow, that's awesome. So that leads me into my next question. And we started to talk about it off air, but if your objective lenses are dirty, what effect does that have on your maximum range? Because the laser's not coming out from the objective lens.
Correct.
It's coming out from the center by the hinge or
that
something.
that emitter lens that's right in front of the center hinge pin, either on an R or a Pro.
Okay.
What I have found, that's a question I've never had before, is do dirty lenses block lasers? And because how dirty are my lenses?
Yeah.
But one of the things I do try to ask people when they say their rangefinder isn't working is your emitter lens clean? Because if it's not getting out there, it's certainly not coming back. So that's the main thing I worry about, is making sure that emitter lens is clean. And honestly, if the way I look at it is, if the lens is not dirty enough that it's affecting your vision when you look through the binocular, then I don't think to look to a dirty lens affecting the laser coming back in.
Gotcha.
And as you probably know, you can have a relatively dirty lens and still look through the binocular and have a great view.
For sure, yeah.
So that's just my homespun,
No, for sure. And so you really want, like, if you're starting to see issues, like if it's not the battery, then it's likely blocking the emitter laser coming out of there.
If there's a blockage somewhere, but the number one reason you have, if your rangefinder doesn't range like it used to or like it should, the number one issue is collimation or alignment of the beam emitter with the beam receiver. It's like knocking your scope off zero. If you bump your scope and you end up 2 inches off at 100 yards, who cares? You're still in the deer's heart. But at 500 yards, you're now 10 inches off, and that's a miss. So by knocking the beam off a little bit here, it's a lot down there. And so the way it manifests itself and you see it start happening is, okay, my 2,000 yard rangefinder is now not ranging anything past 500 or 1,000 yards reliably. And it starts out like it's great to 400 yards, and then it's iffy between 400 and 500 yards, and it won't do anything past 500 yards. That is basically just... Obviously, obvious is the wrong word, but that is almost gospel. Your beam emitter is out of alignment with your receiver. Just whoever your rangefinder manufacturer is, if it's Leica or whoever, send it back to the manufacturer, and they can basically rebore sight the laser emitter.
Oh, cool.
And put it right back in alignment. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome.
As far as the range finding capabilities inside all the products, is there what's the actual percentage of them that do make it back to Leica? Like, what's the standard for you guys as far as
you're saying it's like our incidence of repair,
like quality control?
So, if you're asking, like, how many do we get repaired back for repair?
Yeah, like, what's the expectation on your guys' end of, like, we send out 1,000 binos?
I can't divulge the expectation, but I can say that our incidence of repair, as far as units that come back of a specific SKU versus what we've sold, is well below 1%.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. I figured it was low. I love the laser, and that's something that I've always been impressed with. I did get one pair of binos, which it was a set of binos from another individual just working in the industry.
Right,
Sometimes there's those loaner
Yep,
pairs, and
yep.
it didn't want to work like all the other ones. And I sent it back, and
Yeah.
the next pair was like all the ones that I've kept and used have been just amazing, especially comparing it to other ones. But I was just curious. It's a pretty impressive technology. I was just wondering what that, you know.
Right.
Yeah, we have a great facility in New Jersey that takes care of that. So that if you ever had any issues, the facility there we have a great customer success team there, and they'll have a whole repair team. And if something they can't fix, then we've got our Portugal facility too that will take care of it. So it's
I wasn't sure what that process looked like, because I know other companies has to go all the way over to Europe sometimes to get repaired. And so that can obviously add time, which isn't fun to be out of a product.
When our repairs are measured in weeks instead of days, then we've usually got a pretty good pool of loaner product as well. So we try to send somebody out something to keep them going. And so they're really not without the product. They've got. It may not be exactly what they have, but it's going to be a close to like product that at least will get them through until we can get their repair back to them.
Nice. So awesome.
I got a really random rangefinder question. You may not know the answer to this. It's just an odd one, right?
Hit me.
We've like when we're out hunting, we've got triple A's, sometimes double A's, CR123s. Do you have an idea why it seems like all rangefinders use a CR2 battery?
I would imagine it's because my understanding is that lithium batteries are less susceptible to cold, and their shelf life is better too. They're less likely to rupture and have issues like, when you leave a remote control sitting like in a box, you forget it, and 6 months later you come back and that alkaline battery you've got that white corrosion started in there. The lithium batteries just don't rupture as easily, so you have less chance of damaging a $3,000 piece of equipment by leaving your battery in it all year.
That's what I'm curious, and this might be like a battery manufacturer question on why like every manufacturer's gone to the CR2, because a lot of guys use CR123s in their flashlights or whatever it is, and that's what I've always wondered. Like every manufacturer, there must be something about those CR2s that
I think it's size. Because it's a significantly smaller battery than a 123,
sure.
And you're still getting, like with us, you get an average of, if your Bluetooth turned off on a Pro, or if just on any R, you're going to get about 2,000 measurements on one battery, which for most people that's going to take them well through a year.
Nice.
I've got some guys. If they're constantly using their Bluetooth, they might burn through a battery in a week. But then other guys don't use their battery up in 2 years.
That's a good question about the Bluetooth. Can you disable the Bluetooth if you don't need that and just operate straight off the binos?
And then you go back to that 2,000 ranges battery life.
Awesome. Yeah, that's cool.
And there's other things too, like when you have Bluetooth on, you can have we have settings for Bluetooth timeout, so you can have it time out after a minute, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes. So if you want it to stay linked to your Kestrel with fewer breaks, you tell it to stay on for 5 minutes. If you want it to just be quick and it's not always critical for it to be connected, then use a 1 minute timeout, and it'll stay on less time, and it'll save your battery.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so like if you're at like a PRS match, you could have a longer timeout, so it's just always ready to rock
Always
and
ready
roll.
to connect.
Yeah.
And maybe hunting where
Yeah.
you might want it on a lot in like a very small window, but generally you kind of want that thing to time out just so you're not like burning battery out there on the mountain. Even though like we probably always generally carry an extra. It's like there are times where you don't have one in your pack.
And I think that was just a question because it's like it's literally the only product that uses the CR2, and that's what it was a question for me, because it's like you carry it and it's good because then you don't get tempted to use it in your headlamp or something, so you always have a backup for it. But it is like not every place, like you stop by a random gas station in the middle of nowhere, they don't always have CR2s.
And I find that even just storing your stuff when you're done hunting or at a match. Most people don't pull their batteries out of their stuff. So whenever I get home from like a hunting trip or a shooting thing, I'll just empty out all my batteries and all my little pieces of stuff. So just like lay it on the
Save
table.
those batteries. Yeah. Nice. Jumping back into I'm guessing that this is a software thing, but angle compensation. How does Leica handle that?
So a couple of ways. Okay. Our Geovid Rs use our basic angle compensation protocol, for lack of a better word, where basically we're doing just simple angle incline compensation, but we're doing it with a different calculation for our 10-yard to 100-yard ranges versus our 100-yard to 1,200-yard ranges. Or actually now, I think we're on the R's. We may be going out at 2,000 yards. I know
So bow hunter to rifle hunter?
Yeah, so there's a little bit different way it's calculated for archery distances versus rifle shooting distances. And all it is a different equation, and I have no idea what it is.
Man, yeah, it would be interesting to dive into that in the future because, it's funny things are definitely happening with a bow versus a rifle at those, especially the angle compensation. It has a little bit, I think, shooter to the shooter, it can be different as well from your peep to de-loop height and all that. But that's interesting. So, but on the further stuff, because on rifles, I've never experienced it being like, I think just the trigonomic function on a rifle normally handles it pretty good.
So there are a couple things that we've done it differently over the years, but basically the EHR function in the Pro works the same way it does in the R now. Okay. But earlier with like the HDBs you had, that generation, when we did EHR, we also were taking into account temperature and air pressure for changes in altitude. Because at that point, EHR was the way it was conceived in Germany was for rifle shooters. They weren't thinking about archery, and what it allowed you to do is have one custom cut turret for 59 degrees Fahrenheit and sea level, which is standard atmospheric day, and then you could go to basically any altitude up to about 12,000 feet with that product, and you'd never have to change your turret for different elevations, which most people are familiar with having to do when they're using a rangefinder that just gives them angle compensation.
Yeah, for sure. So. No, that's awesome. What do you got?
We know a lot about that, which is cool, but we also know that as distances extend, based on wind direction, elevation can change.
Yeah.
Which I like the system now, which is very like all the inputs are easily controllable. Where in the past it was just it was a great system. Right. It had less flexibility for the end consumer to really hone in for the guys that were.
It was cutting edge for 2013.
Oh yeah,
not for 2025.
Absolutely. But it's crazy just in that last, realistically, really 5 years how much information's kind of like. It's always been there, but it's really flooded into the market, and
people
trying to get people to understand it.
Yeah, that's been huge.
And the user interface now is the tools are so much more powerful and capable, but they're so much easier to actually program and understand too. Yeah. Now I get all the frustration calls, and the pros, which are the most advanced, most capable, most complicated in some ways, or can do more things than any of the other products. I have fewer frustration calls about them than I do any of our previous programmable rangefinders.
Yeah, the Leica app has leaps and bounds improved, which is sweet. Yeah, it's always good to see that. Like,
give a little credit to Applied Ballistics there.
Yeah,
that's what I tell our customers.
Awesome partner, I'm sure.
The old app was designed by German engineers with the best intentions and the best brains, but the new app was designed by American shooters for American shooters, and it shows.
Yeah, so that's cool.
That's awesome.
Did you want to talk about angle compensation more?
No, I was going to dive into sensors on the binos, but if you've got something.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question's along that. Like, can you talk to me about compass calibration and like how often that needs to occur, and is that in all what
any
binos?
Pro product?
Okay.
Yeah, any Pro product is compass calibratable, and the app will oftentimes tell you when you need to calibrate, and most of the time, if you've calibrated in an area where you are, until you move to another latitude, you won't need to, until you're far enough away from the latitude you were that the system senses that it needs to be recalibrated. It shouldn't ask you to be recalibrated unless maybe it's been an extended length of time.
Okay.
But basically, when you first allow that, when you install the app, it asks the app asks for permissions to access your Bluetooth, which you have to grant, but it also asks for permission to access your location because it's figuring out where you are so that it knows based on changes in latitude if you need to recalibrate that compass. Gotcha. So if you want it to tell you need to recalibrate your compass, you need to give it access to your location, and just do it. Yes, give the yes while using app versus always option.
Yep. Is it, and it will tell you only on the app and on your phone, or will it tell you in bino?
On the app.
On the app. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Can you dive into the other sensors? What all is the bino itself accounting for?
So it's reading distance, angle of incline, temperature, station pressure, which is absolute air pressure versus barometric pressure, so that you don't need to know altitude, because
Awesome.
you need to know altitude when you're calculating bullet drop. You have to know altitude and barometric pressure, or just station pressure, because station pressure is
That's
not
telling you the thickness, the density of the air.
exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
And then it's measuring compass bearing. So for direction of fire versus direction of wind, it's important for that, and then also for Coriolis effect.
Yep. Oh man, that's awesome. So he covered the compass recalibration. What about like temperature when you're either wearing it up against your body, or I know when they sit out in the sun they get hot. Like is that really affecting?
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can be 20 degrees off of what the ambient conditions are if you don't keep it away from your body but out of the sun. So
Gotcha.
basically it needs to be shaded, especially the black ones, because they're going to heat up quicker in sunlight. But yeah, it takes a little bit of time too. So you go from a warm truck to a cold environment, it's going to need 20 minutes or so, because the sensor's inside the unit.
Yeah, you need to like kind of get some airflow moving. Like you see the guys with the Kestrels, but like you're moving that thing to try. But and it inside of 500 yards, it's normally going to be very, very close. But if you're going to try and have an extended shot,
Yeah,
you need to
exactly.
give it a little bit of time there.
Yep.
No, that's awesome. So I like that we covered the. I got to better understand, because I'm really tempted by those 32s, and knowing
I
that
love them.
Man, especially for archery, man, those things look so perfect for like antelope hunting. For like, I don't hunt tree stands much, but it's just like perfect for that type of, and then knowing now that it's accounting for the angle compensation differently for the shorter distance for archery, man, gives me a lot of confidence to give those a go for archery season.
Yeah, I'm not even an archery guy at all. I'm totally a rifle guy, and the 8x32 Pro is my absolute favorite of the line.
Awesome.
Because of the size and the convenience, and also the huge field of view that you get.
Oh,
It's actually got the biggest field of view of all of them. A lot of people think you're losing field of view when you go from the 10x42 to the 10x32, but you're not. You're within 2 feet of the field of view. It's about 345 versus 340 feet, 3.
Wow.
And when you go to the 8x32, it's actually 405-foot field of view.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
For woods use, or for when you're looking out over an area and you're trying to spot game, you're covering so much more of an area. It's at least 20% more field of view in the 8x32 than the 10x42.
Man, that's cool. That's a really tempting bino to be running probably a lot of the season with that much field of view. That's awesome.
And your exit pupil is almost as big out of the 8x32 as well, so you're getting as comfortable viewing. You're not giving much up in the way of eye fatigue or anything like that, and you're also getting a more low light performance in the 8x32 versus the 10x32, because that larger exit pupil when you're comparing 32s.
Oh, cool. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Can we jump in the differences between the pros and the AB pluses now?
Sure. Yeah.
I'm kind of what's the biggest differences there?
So just software, the mechanics, the optics, the laser, the chips, all the hardware is the same. It's just the software, and so the pros come out of the box with Applied Ballistics ultralight software installed, or unlocked, I should say. And so they'll give you elevation and wind corrections to 800 meters or 875 yards, and they do it basically based on G1 or G7 BC, velocity, sight height, over bore, that kind of stuff. When you go to on the homepage of the app, you have that license upgrade button where you can upgrade from Applied Ballistics Ultralight to Applied Ballistics Elite, and that's a $150 in-app purchase, and that unlocks the Elite function, which gives you elevation and wind corrections as far as the rangefinder can range. So if it's a 2,500 yard model, it'll go to 20. If the unit can range the target, you'll get a dope correction, or 3,200 yards or whatever for the 42s and 56s. But you're also adding in programming items for your profile. So you're making your profile more specific and more accurate, because it's needed to go those further distances.
Yep.
You need more data to be able to correctly give dope for 2,000 yard shot than you do for an 800 yard shot. So we're adding spin drift. We're adding the applied ballistics. Backing up from that, you've got the Applied Ballistics custom curves, where they've gone out and Doppler radar tracked the bullets, and they're giving their own value for the BC rather than the corporate value, than the factory manufacturer's value. And yes, so it's going to start correcting for spin drift and aerodynamic jump and Coriolis and that kind of stuff. And you also have things like you can then do a tall target test, where it's got a sight scale factor for vertical and horizontal, which sight scale factor is where you give a value to your click values.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Are my click values 100% accurate?
Gotcha.
Or are they 93% accurate?
Yep.
So do a tall target test.
That's awesome.
You shoot a group, dial 10 mils, shoot another group,
go measure it.
Is it actually 10 mils apart or is it 10.5 mils?
Awesome. Yeah, is it 36 inches at 100 yards or whatever? Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. I kind of, some people might be annoyed, honestly, that they don't get the full elite function when they buy the binos, but just from my perspective, this whole 1,000-yard shooting at stuff, I like it. It's forcing people to like make the decision. I'm going to put more effort in to understanding my ballistics, and like I don't like guys shooting 1,000 yards at animals, and I like that if they want to do that. Maybe they're an ELR shooter, just PRS shooter, and they want to be able to have that. And I do like that there is a little bit extra barrier for entry. Instead of just giving guys answers without them thinking about it.
It was actually intentional on our part from a different perspective, which is it wasn't feasible to give the $150 upgrade for the lower price. Everything would have been $150 more because everything has a cost to it. And we thought, why charge people more money for something they're not going to get? There are plenty of people that want the premium optics, the premium rangefinder, and they think for them, and they're right for them, that 800 yards is further than they'll ever shoot. So why charge somebody for something they're not getting? Let the guys who are going to use that upgrade to the elite. Okay, so back to your original question, what's different between the pros and the Pro AB Pluses is the Pro is $200 more at retail, and $150 of that is the AB Elite upgrade is already in it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so that leaves another $50 price difference. Why are we charging another $50? One, the super cool brown color, the tactical, like the flat dark earth color. Sorry, but the other is we have what Applied Ballistics calls the WES. We call shot probability analysis, and it's never been seen in any rangefinder before. And what it is it's predictive analytics of your shot, and are you going to make the shot or not make the shot? It's a shoot, don't shoot. Sort of indicator for your gun, your target, your conditions, and your abilities.
Awesome.
So instead of just programming the ballistic performance of your rifle, when you have the shot probability analysis feature in the WES, you can build a second profile that the questions it asks are first going to be what kind of target is it. You have animal target options of elk, deer, coyote, or groundhog. And then the vitals that go with that. So it can simulate, it understands about what the vital size of each animal is. Or you can choose plates, rectangular or round. What's the size of the plates? That's the first thing. So it's wanting to know what your target size is. And then it's going to ask you, how good are you at ranging? Well, I'm using a rangefinder, so I'm pretty good at it, right? Without, maybe not. But and so our customers know. Typically, most all our rangefinders are rated to be plus minus 1 meter accuracy at 400 meters and plus minus 2 at 800, and then beyond that, 0.5%. So at 2,000 meters, their accuracy level is going to be plus minus 10 meters. Okay, so you put that into your shot probability analysis, because when you need that shot probability analysis is your long ranges. So you always want to go err on the side of caution, under promise, over deliver to your system, just like to your customers. So I'd give it a plus minus 10 yards if I know I'm going to be shooting long. I'd give it a plus minus of 3 to 5 if I'm shooting within 1,000 yards. But then it's going to ask you, how good are you at measuring wind? Okay, are you plus minus 3 miles an hour, 5, 10, whatever. So that's all that's going into it's building the likelihood of you're making a shot. Next, it's going to ask, what is your standard deviation of your velocity of your round? Over 10 shots, what's your high and your low and your plus minus, because it's figuring out what your vertical stringing capabilities or probabilities are, just from a powder standpoint. Then what else is it going to ask?
Group size?
Yes, group size. So it'll ask, how accurate is your weapon system? And it's not asking, like I've got a half MOA rifle, but my rifle with me behind it ain't a half MOA. And a good day at a pinch, it might be, but in positional shooting in the field, it sure ain't half MOA. So what is my weapon system with me behind it? What its accuracy level. So is it maybe a minute or a minute and a half or 2 minute system? You put that in, and then when you range a target, it's going to say, all right, it's an 800-yard shot, 17 minutes up, 2.5 minutes right, 88% or 18%.
Nice.
Shoot, don't shoot.
Sorry, go ahead.
The question I have with SPA is, if I go build that, let's say I leave my truck, or I'm in my truck, I make sure my SPA kind of dashboard is set the way I want it, and then I go out in the field, I have a readout being my SPA probability. How do we bring wind into that equation? If I set it in my binos or in my dashboard, does that pull into SPA, or do you have to use the little HUD at the very bottom of the SPA to to tie that in. That's the one thing. The technology is like amazing. That's just the one piece that I haven't come to a conclusive answer on how that pulls in, because obviously the wind direction will impact.
Right.
Because I know in the bottom of SPA, if you change it from like a head-on to a 90 degree, it changes the pattern that it shows you and that percentage. Right. But I wasn't sure if like changing it in the binos on the fly, if it pulled it into there or not. So I wasn't sure if you knew that or not.
It should. And if you notice at the bottom of the HUD, where the page you're talking about, there's 3 icons. There's a tower, a finger, and a bino.
Yeah. I probably just need to have it on bino.
Yeah. Okay. Tap the bino, and then it's going to be pulling data from the bino. Which that's mostly for atmospheric data, because that's what it's always been for all the pros. But I would assume that it's pulling in any wind data that you've entered onto the bino itself using the right hand button where you hit it once, hit speed, for SPD for speed, then load it in. Then it should put all that into the HUD. I've never tested it, so I won't give you an answer. I don't want to say, oh yeah, it'll do it, and then
I will.
Yeah, let's test it and find out after after the recording.
We should. I have one more, but I lost it. So if you,
I've got just a dumb question as far as using that. Is that something like every time I go and maybe there's an animal, or maybe I'm just shooting targets? Do I need to reload all that info, or can I have that pre-programmed group size at a standard deviation, and then maybe I just need to have it pull the range and wind information?
So you don't even need the HUD for the SPA to work.
Okay.
You can leave your phone in the truck. Once it's programmed into the binocular, and you can even turn off Bluetooth to save the battery, like we were talking about before. And if everything's working right, Lord willing, when you range something, you're going to get the 4 data points in the binocular. You might not see all the graphics that you would on the HUD, but as I mentioned earlier, you'll see that 800, 17, 2, and then 88 or 18. And so it's working behind the scenes just without as much visual information.
That's awesome. Just from a user interface standpoint, that's all. I was just curious, like how much do you have to do it every time? But it's good to know once you've got it programmed in there, it's going to operate off that until you change it, I'm assuming.
Right.
And then
that's the intent.
And I like that. Like that was a really good question. That it's once you set it to bino, then it's just going to whatever wind, because you're like, if I'm shooting this way and then turning that way, I need to account for the wind change, and then it's going to take all that into account on its own.
And that's where that whole the wind direction, either on the app or on the rangefinder, is important, because your direction of fire it needs to be able to track what your direction of fire is by basically versus wind by you telling it what the clock position is, because it's that actually tracking direction of fire through the ranging process is a patented process that another company has that as far as I understand it, nobody has the ability except for this one company to, every time you range, the compass automatically tells the rangefinder what the difference is. In an app. Now it is my understanding it will work for like us with a Kestrel, where the Kestrel is one product that's reading wind direction.
Gotcha.
And it's taking direction of fire via the compass from the other product. That's outside of this patent, but anyway.
Gotcha.
So maybe I'm too in the weeds there again. But
no, that's great. That's honestly really helpful.
Ryan's going to beat me with a stick.
No.
No, this is like I'm like a sponge right now, just trying to listen to all this, because I don't think this knowledge is really there. It's in the industry, and so it's nice to actually hear from Hamilton. Yeah.
For sure.
So, if I am a consumer who wants the GeoVid Pro, so I think the orange color is just like that's my jam.
Yep.
But I want all the AB Plus software capabilities. I can just upgrade in my app, or I don't. How does that work?
You can as I mentioned earlier, you can upgrade from AB Ultralight to AB Elite, but there's no upgrade from Elite to AB Plus.
Okay. Gotcha.
Unfortunately,
that makes sense.
I'm not saying that'll always be the case.
Yep.
But currently there's no upgrade pathway from Elite to AB Plus.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
Could I ask this a super random bino question in general? There's, to my understanding, there's Poro Prism and there's Roof Prism, and Leicas have a very unique look to them. Are those Roof or Poro Prism?
Poro. And it's a totally unique, different Poro design than any before or after it's actually patented. The guy that invented that system for that binocular, he did it specifically for the needs of having more optical performance with a laser rangefinder. His name's Dr. Andreas Perger, and he works for Leica and it's called the Perger Poro Prism. It's patented design. That what basically they did. If you look at at an image of a Poro prism, the light path in a regular Poro prism, it's basically two-dimensional. It's a flat, squared off S, where the light comes in, it refracts towards the center, it refracts back towards the front, towards the center again, and then back out towards the ocular lens. What Perger did is you have to look at it from front to back, and he took it and took it and moved it into 3 dimensions so that the entrance lens was less offset from the exit lens. The ocular lens and the objective lens are closer together, so you don't have the huge, wide, exaggerated hips look of like you do on a pair of Steiner binoculars or an old set of binoculars you'd see on a Navy ship in a World War II movie where the objectives are way out here. He brought the objectives more in line with the ocular lenses, and he did it by, instead of having it a flat 2-dimensional separation, he made it more of a helix where the light path goes in, it goes up, it goes over, it goes in, and so it's wrapping. It's wrapping instead of just zigging and zagging.
Wow!
But it still left that gentle curvature that made for what a lot of people say is the most comfortable binocular in the industry to hold for lengths of time. It just fits. The curve fits the palm of your hand so nicely.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I was going to ask if there was a specific ergonomic design to the GeoVid lineup of binos, because they do have such a unique. They feel amazing in your hands, or if that was just a byproduct of the optical engineering.
Yeah.
Form follows function. It was a happy accident that making the optical performance where it needed to be, doing what needed to be done, it brought it into a better form as well. And so went back to what I said, where pore prisms are better than roof prisms for lasers. Why that is because a pore prism has 4 refractions in it, and a roof prism has 5. And when that roof prism, those refractions happen, at one point the beam basically passes through itself, and the colors come out of phase.
Wow.
And so we at Leica have on our roof prism binoculars 41 layers of coatings just on the roof prisms to retune the light to get to your eyes. And so it makes for an awesome image, but those layers of coatings interfere with the laser coming through the prism to the beam splitter for the sensor. And so you can't have the optical performance and have the laser performance at the same time in a roof prism. And so they decided we need to go back to a pore prism because you get the optical performance without all the coatings.
Awesome.
In a pore prism.
That's awesome. So, super random question. What does the sensor look like, and where is it in the bino?
It's in the right barrel, and it's off to the side of the prism, and and what it looks like I couldn't tell you.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just random question. It doesn't mean anything, but it's good to know it's on the right hand side for sure.
Yeah.
Just in case sometimes you're doing silly stuff to try and like get a range on an antelope, so you maybe you get that one up a little bit higher or something. Just thinking about that. But, yeah.
The big thing is getting your whole. Like I've found times where I could see a target, but I couldn't get a range off the target because there was something that was in the way. And most of the time it happens with a CRF where I'm seeing over the lip of a rock or whatever, but the lower lens of the CRF is hitting the rock while the objective lens is seeing over the rock.
Yeah, that's what you turn it upside down
exactly.
and do that thing every once. So sometimes that's what
Periscope.
you got to do with those antelope. For sure.
At least on the GeoVids, the laser's above line of sight most of the time.
That's rad.
Yeah, so if you can see it, as long as you don't have anything coming down below you.
Yeah.
Dude, I like that it's on the right one. Just like, I guess with the button there, as a right-handed shooter, it's just good for me to know that it's when you're trying to be really sneaky.
Not great for lefties, but
Here's the thing I'll dispel, because we get so many. Actually, I've had 5 times people have asked this question here at the show. If your laser display, if your display on your GeoVid is crooked, is not level, the unit is not broken. The display is fixed to the right barrel. The barrels squeeze apart and come together for your interpupillary distance, the distance between your eyes. And so only if you are the ultimate average human with the average eye spacing is the display going to be level. If you got wide set eyes and you're built like a hammerhead shark, your display is going to be cocked. We actually named a guy Hammerhead here 3 years ago because of that.
Nice.
But anyway, or if you're a beady-eyed little fella, where everything's really close to your nose, it's going to be tilted down on the outside. So you're a rarity, honestly. If you have a level display in a GeoVid, so we'll just cover that.
No, that's awesome.
So the binoculars, obviously, there's been a lot of innovation there, which is cool. It's tracked with technology. Spotting scopes, I feel like there's a lot less to kind of input there. The televid line seems like it's been relatively unchanged for a while, which means it's obviously a great product.
Right.
Otherwise, you change something. But like,
Yep.
is there much to innovate, or will there be changes to the spotting scope lineup down the line? I mean, maybe that's something you can't disclose, but I'm kind of curious because it's like that's like the one staple I feel like in the lineup that's just like kind of been a bit of a gold standard almost.
Yeah, we're getting there. I think this year you're going to see something different from us on the spotting scope lineup. So it's going to be a pretty solid improvement. But yeah.
And I can say there are other things besides optics where obviously, because the optics itself, as you kind of observe, we're getting so close to the cusp of about maybe perfection is the wrong word, but you can only do so much. You
can't get a whole lot better.
Yeah. And there's a little room for improvement, but they're big leaps and bounds optically are hard.
Can we talk about just the difference between the 65 and the 82? Like I've experienced the performance of the 82, but I'm still tempted by the smaller 65. Do you guys have a way of just stating or whatever what the optical difference is going to be?
Other than looking at terms like looking at like what the exit pupil is, or what's the twilight factor, that kind of stuff, which are those are especially twilight factor is a term that is only good for comparing the products from the same manufacturer of the same line of the same quality set to the same power.
Gotcha.
In that, like, all 10 by 42 binoculars have the same twilight factor. So comparing twilight factor is only good for comparing a Leica 8 by 42 noctivid to a 10 by 42 noctivid. It's not good for comparing a Leica to a Swarovski or a Zeiss to a Leupold or anything like that. So really, it's the obvious. The larger objective lens of the 82 is going to give you more light at every power. It's going to give you larger exit pupil at every power. So you're going to have less eye fatigue and you're going to have a brighter image. And that's really about it. You're and not just a brighter image, but you can see more detail too. Because if you're a 50 power on a 65 millimeter objective versus 82 millimeter objective, because it's bringing in more light, you're going to be able to see more detail. The 50 power is better 50 power in an 82 than it is in a 65.
Gotcha.
So same power setting, you'll see more detail with the 82 than you will with the 65.
Awesome. And on your tripods, the foot of it, is that Arca Swiss or in-shaft dovetail?
Not
or whatever?
currently.
Oh, that's coming? Sounds like?
Not currently.
No. I was just curious if it would, if you needed it.
It'll take a Bogan plate or an Arca Swiss. It's just a quarter 20 thread.
Oh, gotcha.
Foot. Yeah,
going forward though.
It's good. Okay, cool. That's awesome. That's good to know. Just saves that little adapter, and just like when you're going as light as you can.
Yep. And let it set a little lower to your head too, so there's a little less leverage, a little less chance for flopping around.
Awesome. So. And your eyepieces are the same. Same across the board. Is it 25 to 50?
Yeah.
Is that what that is? So
it's funny. The whole hunting market always seems to be power hungry. More power, more better. But how often can you use that 60 power in the field? Yeah, you can use it once in a while, but when the atmospheric conditions are great and the light's great.
Yeah.
But what we did with the 25 to 50 is it's a wide angle aspherical eyepiece that at 25 power or 50 power compared to a 20 to 60 eyepiece at 25 or 50 power. You've got, in ours, a wider field of view with super sharp edge-to-edge clarity. Cool. So with our scope at 25, you cover more territory than with their scope at 25.
Awesome.
And the same at 50.
Awesome. Yeah, that's. I know that the power hungriness. Like I've got Swaro spotters, and I think it starts at 30 power. So it's just too much a lot of the time. So I do like and then the field of view. Like I end up if I'm glassing with a spotter. And when the field of view is really tight, then I find myself moving. I'm not leaving it for long enough to give myself a chance at seeing a deer move or something. And so I do like the wider angle.
Yeah.
Both the less magnification and the wider field of view is awesome.
Yeah.
Looking at those photos, like the hood that covers the lens, like it extends and like helps to track light coming in, or like what's the real like technical advantage?
It's called a sunshade, and because of that sun, it's shading the front of the objective lens from the sun, and so that you get less glare coming in. So if you're looking towards the east in the morning or west in the afternoon, you can pull that out and not have it reduces glare coming into the front of the scope.
I definitely notice a big difference too. Like if you're looking, if you're straight into the sun, there's nothing you can do. But if you're offset just a couple degrees and you pull that thing out, it definitely makes a big difference. You know, see less glare and see what you're actually looking at.
You don't get that washout.
Yeah, because somebody was asking me a question yesterday about just mirage in general with a spotting scope, and it seemed like a good question for, like, you know, if you're out in the different temperatures and different areas, you know, mirage definitely comes in play with a spotting scope, and is it as beneficial as you want? Because he was talking about using the 15 by 56s as opposed to a spotter. So like we have our Geovid R that has a 15 by 56, and he was just kind of like meandering between the two. He's like, well, we have so much mirage. Like, is the spotting scope actually do me justice, because I can't actually go out and look out at that distance. So,
Nice, awesome. Got any other spotter questions? Cool. Let's jump in the rifle scopes a little bit. This is a new hot topic that's coming. It's been around for a little bit, but like guys are all pretty hopped up on drop testing their rifles, rock slide. Those guys are doing a lot of that type of stuff. Do you guys? What is your protocol for testing your scopes and dropping, like doing a drop test when they're on a rifle or anything like that?
I don't have any info on dropping on a rifle. It's all on a recoil impulse simulator where it's something like, I can't remember the numbers right now, but I want to say it's 1,000 impacts at maybe 800 Gs, and then 50 impacts at 1,200 Gs or something like that. That's a stat I don't have in my head right now. Yep. What I can say is that's one of the reasons our scopes are heavier. So you look at our Amplus line. That's the one thing that you could say that is a disadvantage from the outside, just reading the specs. Well, the Amplus is heavier. Well, it's also shorter. It's got more than 2.5 times the elevation of some of the closest competitors. You know, better optics is more durable, and this because it's more durable. That's why it's heavier.
Gotcha.
We build our scopes with the thickest tube walls in the industry for hunting non-military scopes, and our tube walls are up to twice as thick as our competitors. You've got less chance of crushing a tube wall with accidentally over torquing your rings. Don't test it. We're not, but you know, we build our scopes to a different level of ruggedness and it's just part of our DNA.
I think that thicker tube wall is important because what people don't think about nowadays, they think everything's all plug and play. Like people are trying to bypass gunsmiths and they want to mount all their stuff themselves. And what a lot of people are bypassing, I did for a while until I kind of paid the price, but people aren't lapping their rings. So the front and back ring aren't necessarily in the same plane and with a lighter scope wall. And you go torque it, even if you don't over torque it, but you've now torqued it in 2 sets of rings that are not in the same plane.
Yeah.
And I would imagine that helps with that because a lot of times I've experienced where I've sent a scope back to a very reputable manufacturer, and they're like, "There's nothing wrong with it." And that's when I dove in. But I would imagine that heavier tube wall helps mitigate some of that problem.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, that's awesome. Any other scope questions? Was it?
I haven't got to use the scopes enough to probably have a too deep of a list of questions on it.
Maybe Hamilton, if you want to go through like the Amplus 6 and the PRS and our new Fortis, just kind of give a general overview of the line.
Okay, so the Amplus line I would consider more our American hunting line with emphasis on Western hunting / long range capability. All of the scopes except for the 1 to 6 power, which would be obviously like our pig scope, the 3 to 18 and the two versions, the 2.5 to 15, 50 millimeter or 56 millimeter objective lenses, they're all MOA adjustment. They have options for either a Christmas tree, a wind hold only, or a T-shaped. MOA reticle. The reticles are MOA as well as the turrets. You've got BDC turrets that are toolless, zero adjustable, and zero stop adjustable. The zero stop requires a tool. It's just a little Allen wrench. They have 30 millimeter. All of our scopes have 30 millimeter tubes, 6 times zoom ratios, and illuminated reticles. So it doesn't matter what the line is. It's more about how they're configured after that sets them apart. As I said, the Amplus is the American hunting line. It's a $1,400 to $1,700 retail product that offers an incredible value. The 3 to 18 is our most popular selling SKU in history. Probably sold more of that than all of our other scopes combined. And a big part of that is because it's only 12.5 inches long and a 30 millimeter tube, but it's got 130 MOA of elevation.
Oh wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's
I was looking at the weight on it. It's not even significant. I think it's 23 ounces or something like that. It's not that heavy for.
Yeah.
I had no idea it had that much elevation travel. That's amazing.
It feels heavier than it is because it's so compact. You know, a 23 ounce scope that's a 1.5 feet long feels a lot lighter than a 23.5 ounce scope that's just a foot long. Because it's just, you know, more the weight's just packed into a smaller area, right?
For sure.
There's mill offerings in that lineup too, right?
So there are, but with a number 4 reticle, because the mill offering is really for the American hunting market is so still vastly MOA. The PRS market is the more mill market from what we've, you know, the numbers show us.
Yeah.
So we and our sales are reflecting that too. I mean, the in the Amplis, the mill scope sales are, you know, a drop in the bucket compared to the MOA sales.
Gotcha.
And it's also sort of a first focal plane, second focal plane thing too, because the Amplises are all second focal plane, and the MOAs tend to go hand in hand with second focal plane. And most people who have a first focal plane seem to want mill.
Yeah,
For sure.
I feel like a lot of that will 10 years from now be very different.
Yeah,
It's slowly
yeah,
changing.
yeah.
Educating the your average American hunter is challenging. In their mind, they think they know what an MOA is. They don't, but they think they do.
Right.
And so it's easier for them to understand. They think by going mill, they're going metric, and it's just it's a base 10 communication system.
Right.
But we're slowly trying to help spread the word.
And they think that zooming their scope all the way in is an advantage.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Let me tithe to your church because I believe what you're preaching. It's just a number, and a 10-based number is easier to follow. And
100%, man. Trying to explain an American tape measure, man, like versus a base 10 off. And the thing when I tell them, like, they think they know it's 18 inches out there. Like, you don't have to think about that. You have a tape measure in your scope.
Right.
Like, that's why I love the PRB reticle. It's like you just have a tape measure. Just use your tape measure and apply it to the turrets or hold or whatever you need to do.
Step back just for a little bit because your knowledge is pretty far advanced. Like, explain more of a simplified manner of like what that means, the differences between the two.
With MOA or
MOA or
it's just a communication. Like if I say 1.7
or if you're like in a shooting condition or as a new hunter, like what would that mean or how would that help you be?
So like if you're like, it's easy at 100 yards because everybody is under you guys are your true MOA, not shooters MOA. Yeah, so true MOA is 1.047 something inches at 100 yards. So every click is actually, it's not moving at a quarter inch. It's slightly more than that. I couldn't tell you the math right now, but so it makes a lot of sense when you're at 100 yards and like, oh, I'm half an inch low. That's 2 clicks up. It gets you back in the ballpark. That's not the challenge. The challenge is when it's at 346 yards or 472 yards, and you're like, guys are trying to like, oh, I missed based on what they perceive as a foot. And they're trying to figure that out and then apply it to the hold where the elevation or wind. Where if you have a first focal plane scope, first of all, it's the tape measure in the scope. The reticle is the same at all magnification.
Make the tape measure.
It's the same value at every magnification, and then you just use that reticle to measure. I missed 6/10 left, and so then you're going to hold 6/10 more, or if you missed 5/10 high, you're just going to move. And again, just the base 10 operating system versus talking quarters, halves, and 3/4. It's easier just to talk in tenths, like 0.6, 0.7, 0.8. It's much clearer, simple communication. Again, obviously Americans, we run standard tape measures. And we get down to the 16ths and 30 seconds sometimes. Again, still a base 10 operating system. Numbers, it's just easier to communicate. Right?
Yep.
It's easier to remember on the fly, too.
100%.
Like, 400, I'm 1.4 mils instead of,
100%.
4.25 or 5.75. Or there's less numbers in it. And there is a methodology that's pretty accurate for, like a gun number for wind.
Yep.
If for some reason you wanted to take a shot on the fly without.
The simple math is much easier with mills versus MOA when you're using that gun number. So there's a reason that match shooters all gravitate towards mill. You know, if you just want to, like, I could take a MOA and go hunt and be successful and be great, but and you know, I could probably do it in matches too. It's just the intuitive thinking on the fly works a lot easier for me and most others with a mill system. So that's why I'm really interested in the PRS scope as well. It's got a great reticle, first focal plane, mills, like toolless zero. Toolless. I love the toolless, man. That's awesome.
And the other thing you mentioned there was first focal plane, man. If only I could get almost every scope on the. If I could just almost wipe out second focal plane for me,
for sure.
Have that reticle work at any power you're on. Dial the scope, and that's the great thing about it. Like you were talking about earlier about the everybody wants to dial to the max zoom. Don't dial to max zoom. Dial to where the scope is comfortable to your eye and you can see the target.
100%.
And then your reticle works for you at whatever that power happened to be.
Forgiving eye box, like more field of view, like all of that is just going to help you more so. Because it seems like most scopes that I've played with, when you're at max zoom, has the least forgiving eye box, the tightest field of view. And it's just
the image gets so much darker.
100%.
I mean, it's literally like turning the dimmer light switch down.
I think it also contributes to target panic with rifles.
100%.
Because I would compare it to shooting a bow. If I'm shooting at 80 yards, like I'm trusting the flow. When I'm at 20, I want that thing right there. And when you zoom all the way in, you want that reticle right there. When you zoom out, it's a little more natural feel. And I feel like just the way that you perceive that impulse when you're zoomed in is a lot more harsh. You're like, oh, than kind of being able to almost, like when we're shooting a lot, our eyes just stay open. And looking through that, it's not like a scary, like, boo, like, whoa, And so I think if more people kind of back things off a little bit, they probably shoot better. I think their mental state around, like, the firearm and what's occurring there might be
for sure.
And their eyes will end up a lot less tired at the end of the day too. You can still, with the lower power, you get less eye fatigue looking through that scope, and you stay fresher and you're more nimble and more agile for going through whatever it is you're trying to do shooting wise.
For sure. No, that's awesome. It's a funny thing. The other, like the second focal plane where you have to crank it up, and then most reticles are like 1 MOA. But then it is like it's just too tight, and so then they're like, okay, I need to back my power off in half maybe, and then like, oh, now I need to double these, and and I see people struggle like first focal plane. They think that it's more complicated. It's far simpler because wherever your magnification is, it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So,
exactly.
Yeah, we'll help keep pushing the market that way. Hopefully.
It took forever. That was but we got the PRS rifle scope line. Came out about 5 years ago now, and that's our mill first focal plane product with Cal Zant's help, that PRB reticle. He took input from some of the top shooters in the country to build it. And,
that guy's awesome. Yeah,
and I love the hollow center instead of a dot. Growing up, the way I learned to shoot a rifle was the little 22 50-foot competition where you use a little bolt action 22 with double peep sights.
Oh, the ghost ring or whatever.
The old ghost ring is what the modern tactical term or whatever. They used to call it a double peep. And so lining up one circle within another, and then lining up the circle of the bullseye in the two circles. By looking where you want your bullet to go, it's just so intuitive.
Man, it's and like speaking about Joel Turner talks about this a lot, and he's done a really good job of describing how your brain is working, and it's called he uses the term visual proprioception, and he likens it to like when you're driving down the center of the road. If you like get a little bit off left, you don't think, oh, right this much or back left this much. Your brain just automatically wants to put stuff in the center. So when you're using that open dot, you're just looking at it, and your mind self-centers that thing. You don't need to think about it. It's a really intuitive tool, and then you're able to look specifically on your target versus having a black dot covering part of your target.
Yeah, same for me. It's like even if I'm shooting with my bow or something like that, I'm always like trying to peek around the corner to see what's behind my pin.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
Well, your head follows your eyes, and your body follows your head. You skiing. I mean, I hadn't done it in a long time, but I learned very early. If you look at the tree's what you're going to hit.
Oh,
if you look at the slope, you're going to stay on the slope, right? So, and same thing here. You look where you want your bullet to go. Everything kind of just naturally starts to line up behind that.
Yeah. That's awesome. It is a sick reticle. I'm excited to try it because I've shot a lot of other reticles that are similar, but I haven't spent enough time behind this one. But it works for my brain. I really like 2/10 increments because you can hold every tenth really easily. I love it.
Will you reiterate for us and for everyone who's still listening the correct way to set up a rifle scope for your eye optically?
Sure.
Because I think that's something that gets just people mount stuff up and they start away they go.
You think, and like where it's located, or like diopter and
and like realistically how to get the diopter right for your eye, so the parallax and everything in the scope is functioning the way it should be, and you're not fighting it, maybe.
So the key to parallax is key to diopter is lack of anything to be able to focus on except the reticle. So there's nothing to confuse your eye. Set the gun up where you're looking at a blank wall with as little detail on the wall, like pure white, not stucco, or clear blue sky, and start with the diopter adjustment. Turned all the way counterclockwise out, and turn it in quickly clockwise. And you might even, between movements, you want to flick your eye away and then back maybe. I don't usually have to do that, but some people recommend that because it allows your eye to reset. But basically, you want to make quick adjustments because the first impression is usually the right impression. If you start trying to, is that right, is it not? Your eye starts trying to compensate and you don't know as well. So make a faster movement. And basically, the moment the reticle, you bring it into focus, and the moment you can detect it's going out of focus back while you're going clockwise, go back counterclockwise and bring it to that last best spot. And that should be your best at best, and leave it there for all conditions, diopter adjustment. And then from there, you run your parallax to whatever your parallax needs are. Ignore the numbers on the dial. It's always about the focus of the reticle versus the target, and about lack of movement, separating the reticle from the target when you move your head up and down, side to side, circular pattern.
Awesome.
Forget those numbers.
Yep. Nice.
Is there any measurement scale on that diopter ring to know that it's still set somewhere? Okay.
So you have you'll have two arrows, one left, one right, and then you'll have a dot on the actual eyepiece, the rotating eyepiece. There's a dot that you can reference how far from center it is.
Okay.
And I'll show it to you on the PRS if you.
Yeah, I just haven't, like I said, not as familiar with those. So.
Okay. Yeah. Usually my when I set up a scope, I'm usually somewhere between 1 o'clock and 2:30 for moving to the right clockwise when I'm behind it for me, and so I just know to go there generally on most scopes if they're diopter neutral when they say they're diopter neutral.
For sure.
Nice.
Cool.
That's awesome.
Can we talk about the thing that we really want to talk about, which is coyote hunting?
I've never done it, so I want to hear about it.
Man.
I've shot coyotes before, but I've never coyote hunted. I'd love to do that.
But let's talk about the Colinox too, and coyote hunting
For sure.
So yeah.
I had the Kalinox 1. I still have the handheld, the View, right?
Yep.
Which is awesome. The thing that I ran into was that the original Kalinox seemed fickle, mounting it with the Rusan adapters to, like, I didn't have the Amplus scope at the time, like a Night Force or something of different powers. I felt like I didn't get the full perfect field of view that the sight was affording me. How does that work for people that are looking at the Kalinox 2 and wanting to mount it to whatever their existing optic is? Is there an ideal zoom range, or how do you know that that's going to line up with your scope when you mount that?
So the Kalinox 1 had 4 different profiles in it, and the different profiles had different screen sizes because they were optimized to rifle scopes of certain powers. So profiles 1 and 2 were optimized for use between 1 and 3 power. And then profiles 3 and 4 were optimized for use between 4 and 5 power, but never more than 5 power. So that was kind of what the expectation of what kind of scope you'd be using was with it. And of course, the higher power you go, the less field of view you got because you were zooming in. The screen itself, the image itself, is the max for field of view. And at 1 power, you could be zoomed out where you actually had some black and a bordering visible outside. But as you zoomed in, you're killing your field of view. But it would actually shrink down the image for profiles 3 and 4 for the 4 to 5 power magnification. The field of view, the image itself would be the same, but it would be shrunk down to a smaller size so that you could use that magnification to get closer and still see the full field of view, if that makes any sense.
It does. Maybe there was user error on my part because I don't think I ever knew there were different sizes, because mine was always zoomed in slightly to where I lost a little on the edges.
Gotcha.
So that was probably user error, but that's obviously, I'm sure, like something that guys are like, well, will it work with my scope? And like, how do you get it optimized to like fit this system? I'm sure it works exceptional with the Leica products.
And it, pretty much any quality product that was A, durable enough to handle that extra weight under recoil on the front of the scope, and B, had good optics and good tracking and all that kind of stuff. By far more customers are using them on non-Leica scopes than Leica scopes because of the, it was really well sort of pollinated out there amongst just a vast array of users. I was always one that got the calls of what adapter do I buy, and I would say that probably 10-15% of them were Leica rifle scope users at most. The rest of them were Night Force, Schmidt and Bender, Leupold. That kind of stuff.
Is that as easy as just taking a set of calipers and measuring the outside of the objective on whatever scope you have?
Exactly.
And getting the appropriate adapter. Awesome.
Yeah. And so the old adapter was a one-piece adapter. Now we have a two-piece modular system, like a phone scope, where half stays on the rifle, half stays on the thermal. It's much quicker, much easier.
That's awesome. Can you tell me about zeroing when going from thermal on, thermal off? And if you were going on a coyote hunt and you want to hunt without the thermal on during the day and then throw it on at night, what's the zero in?
Leave your gun alone, and with the old Calinox, you zeroed the Calinox to your scope.
Okay.
So you'd put it on and you'd shoot and see if you need to go up, down, left, right. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. The new one, the Calinox 2 that's coming out this summer, we announced last year, but it's supposed to be delivered this summer. It is so well aligned between the sensor and the display that it is intended that you don't have to zero it, that it's basically optically centered all the way through.
So if you have a 100-yard zero,
you should be able to just drop it on and not have to adjust your Calinox at all. If you do, then when you adjust it, it should hold true so that any other properly zeroed rifle, you should be able to go from gun to gun to gun without any more re-zeroing.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's kind of exciting to think about if you're going on a coyote hunt and you're just got some of these guys go like 48 hours straight and going from day to night. You don't have to worry about trying to find a place to re-zero your rifle every time to check it. It should be in theory. Like obviously you want to check it before you go on a hunt like that. But once you've got it set up, then you're good to go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Pre-test it at the range a couple of times, take it off, put it on, that kind of stuff, and see if it holds zero. But it's intended to.
What's the ideal scope to mate with that thermal?
So something that has, I would say, between 1 and 3 power on the low end.
Okay.
The new one is rated. The old one was rated max. You didn't want more than 5 times magnification. Now the new one, we've got smaller pixel sizes and bigger sensors. So the image is even more detailed than it was before. So basically, you're talking about your Calinox View. Your Calinox View had significantly better thermal performance than your Calinox Sight.
Oh, yeah.
The Calinox 2 Sight has the thermal performance of your Calinox View.
Nice.
It's a 640 by 480 sensor with a 12 micron pixel. And an improvement, too. We went from 50 to 60 hertz refresh rate, so you can have smoother motion. You also don't get that clicking of the reset anymore. It's a much smoother system that's constantly resetting internally behind the scenes, and it's not doing that click freeze.
Yeah.
And then 2 minutes later, click freeze. It's not doing that anymore.
Cool.
So it's improved basically across the board. Was there something I didn't answer?
I'm not familiar with the Calinox 2.
Okay. So
is it just a clip-on, or does it have any range-finding capability?
So there are now the Calinox 2 is going to have 4 variants. There's going to be a view and a sight, so a handheld only, or a clip-on that can be used as a handheld. Yep. And both the view and the sight will have the option of having a rangefinder built in.
Oh, okay.
So view and sight without rangefinder are 4,400 retail. View or sight with rangefinder are 5,300 retail.
Nice.
Awesome. What's that ranging capability like?
1,000 yards is the ranging capability,
cool.
and this is our first rangefinder with a thermal. And I will say, because I'll never want to have false expectations. The real-world target capabilities of this rangefinder, I would not put them on our handheld hunting rangefinders or our Geovids as far as 1,000 yards is the conservative rating, and you may end up ranging something beyond that. That's a shooting target. It's 1,000 yards on this one. I would say is, from what I understand anyway, is going to be more of a the upper end of its capabilities.
Gotcha. So I know guys might want to be shooting further, out at those distances, but I think with coyotes, we're like trying to call them in, and you're going to shoot them inside of 300 yards, ideally closer than that, but knowing the range and not guessing at it, because I've definitely done some thermal in when I have no rangefinder. It's like, dude, I have no idea if that's 50 or 200 or 400 yards. It's just kind of tough to judge in the dark there. So it's be super cool to have that. What's the beam divergence on that? Is it a wider one?
No idea.
Okay.
I haven't seen that spec yet. Sorry.
Gotcha. No worries. I was just kind of curious if like on a closer target type of thing, if it would be a wider one or how that would work.
Don't know. Sorry.
No, nice. That's awesome. You got any more thermal questions?
No, I'm excited to try one.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I think this is like eye fatigue, and like some guys will run like the clip on and then also run the view at the same time, from an eye fatigue standpoint, because you don't want to be behind your gun the entire time, trying to scan. So obviously there's a lot of different solutions out there for thermal. Like you can have stuff in your truck. I think you have, Zach, you have one, like you can have like on an iPad and you're running the.
Yeah, like Cam, who you met, he's got the like top mount in the truck with the screen. Like,
gotcha.
I don't have that.
You don't
like the patrol car.
I wish.
When it's -20 out, you're warm inside the truck and
drive around
let that thing do the scanning. Yeah.
There is one other feature to me that's a real advantage over the old one that I'll mention, and that is that the switching system is new. And now you have a switching system that's like our Magnus rifle scope was, where you had off in the middle, and you have daytime to one side and nighttime to the other. And daytime setting and nighttime setting are individually settable, so that we've got 6 color palettes. We've got white hot, black hot, red hot, green hot, red outline on white hot, and then that sort of rainbow color spectrum.
Which red line's like kind of like zombie apocalypse type stuff.
Yeah. And to me, it actually kind of degrades. It looks cool, but it helps pick a large heat gradient out from a distance, but it actually it degrades the image quality to me. So I don't use it very much, but basically, the daytime setting you could set to white hot and have the screen set to a brighter setting, so you have a more intense daylight usable experience, and you go right to that when you go to the daytime setting. But then you go to the nighttime setting, like I'll use either the green hot or the red hot, because that lack of white makes it more gentle on my eye, and I also turn the display down so the intensity of the display is much lower, so that I immediately have a nighttime comfortable to my eye setting that I go to, boom, on the nighttime setting, or reverse on the daytime. So
that's cool.
it's a quick start for various conditions, and I really like that feature versus the old ones.
What about battery life in that scenario?
About 5 to 7 hours, depending on the intensity of the display, is your battery life. It's a USB-C input and output, so you can use an external battery source if you want, or charge it from a USB-C charger. When you take
battery
a break
pack
between
whatever.
setups, whatever.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Tell me about the interface with the rangefinder on it. Where is it? A button on it, or is there a remote that comes back?
There's both. So there's an optional remote that you can Velcro to your forend.
Awesome. Yeah, just to get it, because that way you're not trying to reach out by the end. That's awesome.
Exactly.
Super cool. Or you can get it by your trigger finger and hit it, and then that's awesome.
That's another area where our 3 to 18 ampless has been really popular, because it's such a short scope.
Yeah.
You've got a scope that is more than a 1 to 6. But it's still very short, so it's easier to reach that focus ring out at the front of the clip-on.
Cool.
For it's not you don't need Ryan's wingspan to get out to that front, like you do with a big long 5 to 25 or something like that. So it's a little more user friendly to have that short scope for reaching the focus.
Awesome. Well, that's exciting, man. I'm like that was a great having your expertise to answer some of these random questions. Been super helpful, because you can go read online and you'll get 100 different answers. And It's great to have somebody that actually knows.
Sure.
So
happy to be here.
Yeah.
One other thing about the Callux, the old one had it too. The new one's got it. Is one of the best warranties in the industry. It is a 10-year warranty.
Wow.
And that covers accidental damage as well.
Wow.
So, and it covers everything but the battery, which has a 5-year warranty. And after 5 years, we're projecting. We've never had to charge somebody for a battery replacement, because anyone that's happened's been on a warranty. But the projected cost to replace a battery is $120, $125.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that's it. So it's
I got one super random question about it. I've heard about.
How many random questions do you have?
Dude, they just keep coming, man.
This is his 12th one random question.
I've probably said that a lot. We're going to cut them all, and we'll make a little clip of how many times I've said that. So I've heard on night vision that you can't look at the sun or super bright things, or might burn the sensor. Does the same thing happen with a thermal?
It's never happened to me, and I've looked at lots of hot things. So
okay, cool.
Yeah, I've never.
That's what I've heard of. Like pointing a night vision at the sun will burn the sensor.
Yeah. So it used to be that bright night vision, or that night vision systems were very susceptible to bright light sources.
Gotcha.
And I think they have protection systems built into them now, but I'm no expert on them, so I can tell you.
But thermal, we don't have to worry about it.
Awesome. The thermal system, it's a digital camera. That's all it is. So it's just, instead of seeing light, it's seeing heat.
Gotcha.
And that's why they work. Like in here, you can see taxidermy, this room temperature, with the thermal, because what the thermal's doing is as opposed to picking up a wavelength of light, it's picking up a wavelength of heat, or whatever the term for it is, and it's just able to detect fractions of a degree in difference in air. So something that kudu might be a 20th of a degree warmer than the room, and it detects that.
Wow.
It also you can see footprints on the floor.
Really?
And I'll tell you, play with. I've had buddies over at night. We've had a couple of drinks and we're out messing around outside. You have no idea how much you splatter when you pee until you see somebody do it through a thermal.
I've seen some crazy stuff about the war in Ukraine, man, with guys like they are very intentional digging pits, the peeing and stuff, because all that stuff shows up. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. It's like a dang a homing beacon almost.
Yeah.
Now, I was just doing some research. There are now this is totally off subject, but there's a Ukrainian now has the record for the longest one-shot kill at 3,800 yards.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
Wow.
That's so back
Probably
to the whole long range shooting
Creed
stuff.
more. It's a long ways.
That's wild.
As far as the objective on the thermals, what's the cleaning regimen there? How do people how should they take care of that front of the
Gently.
Yes, that's what I've always done. I've never even cleaned mine. I've always been very like caps on when I'm done, caps on until I'm using it. But
blow it clean first. The worst thing you can do with any optic is to look at your hold your binocular with your objective lens facing the sky and just take a rag and start scrubbing it. All you're doing is moving the stuff that's already on there around and maybe scouring your lens. Turn it upside down, use air or a brush, and try to knock everything you can loose first and get it out, and then look at it. And you might need a little spritz of lens cleaner or whatever, and then give it like they used to say, wiping CDs. You just go left to right. If you do this, all you're doing, whatever dirt's there is trapped and it's just getting swirled in. You do this and you flick off, you have a chance of getting the trash and debris off the lens.
So it falls off nice. Microfiber, I'm assuming.
Just
cool.
any lint-free cloth. Yeah, don't use paper towels, that kind of stuff.
Awesome. Yeah.
sweet.
Well, cool. Sounds good. Hamilton, I appreciate it. Ryan,
thank you
thanks
very
for having
much.
us.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it's great to meet
pleasure.
you, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah. All right.